afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Luke Sarwick. I'm with the New York City Clean Heat program, here to talk about finalizing your clean heat conversion. This is going to be third of our three-part series webinar during these last few months of the number 6 phase out in New York City. Just wanted to go over some really key important things as you start to think about and hopefully finalize your clean heat conversion. So as you know, clean heat is part of Plan YC, and we provide free technical assistance to properties throughout New York City that need to comply with heavy heating oil regulations and their phase out. My name is Luke Sarwick. You have my email up there. There should be no more buildings that are permitted on number 6 oil. So if you know of a building, or if you're managing or own a building that's still on 6 oil, you really only have a few months remaining to comply with these regulations. The second part of the regulation in an effort to clean up the air in the city was to phase out number 4 oil, which we also consider a heavy heating oil. Now, although you're allowed to burn number 4 until 2030, you will not be allowed to use it if you have to change out your burner or your boiler. So as soon as you have to change out any of those components of your heating system, the regulations are triggered, and you will not be allowed to re-permit for 4, in which case you would have to go to something cleaner, such as number 2 or natural gas. When the regulations were put into place, the city and the mayor's office also put together our program in an effort to basically help folks with this transition period. We provide free technical assistance through the process. We'll guide buildings through the conversion, whether it's liaising between all the city agencies, understanding the regulations, the timelines, and everything else that you need to strategize which fuels you might need to go to. We can help you with that. We'll also help you to connect you to any financial assistance that's available, whether it's incentives or financing that's on the table right now through partner organizations. And we've developed a website that a lot of folks use to, not only to get information about the conversion process, but also to get a wealth of information about incentives. And of course, a lot of folks check our Spot the Soot map, which basically maps out every single building in New York City that has to comply with these regulations. Some of the target fuels that we were encouraging folks to look at are obviously the cleaner ones. As I said earlier, 6 is already finished by this summer. 4 oil is on its way out. Therefore, we never recommend those 2 as an alternative. And we look to the cleanest fuels as a great way to transition. Ultra low sulfur number 2, biodiesel blends, natural gas, steam, and any other alternatives that are out there are all great choices. Now, just getting into some of the consequences of not complying with these regulations. If you do choose to operate on an expired permit, and we're talking about, right now for folks that might be on number 6, that might have, are basically behind a little bit and still need a little bit more time. Their DEP is enforcing these regulations strictly, especially during these last few months. So the first thing that happens is you'll receive a notice of violation if your permit is expired and you're operating your building on an expired permit. You'll be mandated to comply within the allotted time to convert to the cleaner fuel. The next step of the enforcement is that you will receive a cease and desist notice from DEP. Now, along the way, I know the DEP will send out inspectors, and you'll be notified and you'll be given plenty of time. But they are stepping up their enforcement. And once you are issued a cease and desist, you'll be asked to go in front of an ECB judge and basically told how to correct your issue within an allotted amount of time. And a cease and desist order, which DEP can then act on, is basically shutting down your boiler, which means no heat, no hot water. So we don't want we don't want that to happen to any of the buildings we're working with, and certainly the DEP doesn't want to shut down anyone, but they will if they have to. There are additional consequences. So in addition to being out of compliance, there are other consequences for your buildings that a lot of folks don't always think about. If you're operating on an expired permit, there might be some insurance implications. It's a non-compliant building. God forbid anything happens. Banks are starting to look a lot more at compliance issues related to buildings when giving out mortgages or providing loans to tenants or potential co-op members or new folks coming into the building. It's also a reflection of how the building is being managed. These regulations are not new. These changes were known well in advance, and we are hoping folks would be able to plan in advance of the regulations hitting. And lastly, and really importantly, this impacts the air quality for your residents, for the neighbors. You can see the graph here on the right. The impacts of particulate matter emissions while going through the different grades is significant. And there's a tremendous amount of reduction in particulate matter emissions, which cause all kinds of respiratory illness from the combustion of these fuels. So we really think the environmental impact is important as well. So getting down to finalizing your conversion, as I said earlier, we're in these last 2 months. By June 30th, there should be no more buildings on 6 oil. We recommend some quick hits for buildings to understand where they are. You might be in the process of converting, or you may have recently completed a conversion. It's important that you understand how the DEP and us and how we view your building and you should make sure all your paperwork has been completed. You should double check if your engineer or contractor has done everything that was in the contract, and you want to make sure you're not getting fined even though you completed your conversion. So one really quick check you can do is go on to our website at cleanheat.org, spot the soot, and there you'll find every single building that's permitted by the DEP. The DEP helps us to update this map regularly, and so you should check there what type of fuel we have you as, and make sure it's correct. And if it's not, please reach out to us. So it's really important that you guys are in touch with us as much as you can be to let us know if you're having any issues, any problems. That's our job, that we're here to help you. We don't want anybody to be fined, and neither does the DEP. So we do everything we can to reach out to a building before anything happens, and we'd like for you guys to come to us first. The other thing you can do is check the DEP website. The DEP CAT system, you'll be able to find your permit and any kind of permit you've had throughout the years. You'll be able. That's a really current record of what's happening in terms of your permits for your property. You could also contact them if needed, but we do strongly suggest you contact us first, and we'll help you through the process. So we have about less than 600 buildings remaining on 6 oil across all of New York City. Now this is huge. We started out with about over 5,000 buildings across all of New York City. We're down to the last 600. So really these buildings are the last of the last buildings that still need to comply by June 30th. No more buildings will be allowed on 6. So expect strict enforcement in these last couple months. And please contact us if you're still on 6 oil today for an expedited conversion plan. And if you're in the process of moving away from 6-oil, such as you might be waiting for natural gas, you need to consider getting into compliance first. So if even though you might be converting or actively converting to natural gas, that doesn't mean that you're still allowed to use number 6 for the time being. So waivers or any sort of extensions or any sort of special treatment will not be given to anyone that's in the process. If your permit is expired, you should expect enforcement. And what's really important is that you should also understand where you are in the regulatory process. I went over earlier that basically the first strike is you'll get a notice of violation. The second and the last strike is that you'll get a cease and desist. You should know where you are in that process to avoid both of them at all costs. So some quick solutions to resolve those issues might be to quickly convert to ultra-low sulfur 2 as an interim step. And possibly, although this is not the best option, but sometimes it's the only one, is that you can employ a temporary heating system to basically get into compliance while you're waiting for your conversion to finalize. This is just a quick list of things, of basically ways that DEP, what you need to do to comply and to file your paperwork. This is something contractors and engineers should know about, and they should be guiding you through the process. But just in case, we put this up here. So the first thing that needs to happen is a building that's converting away from 6-oil. They file an amendment. This should be filed by a licensed professional. Then they need to submit an affidavit once the work is completed. And then as part of the renewal process for your permit, for your triennial permit, you have to submit an inspection request along with a performance test that's done by a qualified combustion tester. And just a small note here that if you are on 6-oil and operating on an expired permit, you must receive approval from DEP prior to for the fuel conversion prior to filing for that amendment and prior to submitting your inspection request. And all of this can be done online, and DEP encourages everyone to use their online system. It's much faster and a lot more streamlined. So go to nyc.gov /DEP/CATS. Some other regulatory tips, and this is a result of basically working with folks throughout the years, and as we're getting towards the end here, we're seeing a lot of these issues come up over and over again. One issue that we've been hearing is folks are having issues because they might have other building violations, so non-boiler related violations, non-emergency type violations can be bypassed by filing a DOB application L2. It's basically an override request. It's to help you finalize your boiler conversion so that you can get into compliance with your boiler permits, but not have to deal with all the other violations that your building might have, including any other other issues that might be basically preventing you from being able to comply with the regulations that we care about. Another big one, and I touched on this already a couple of times, is that if you're in the process of converting, and most folks that convert to gas these days are going the dual fuel route, and at least keeping dual fuel capability, in which case, we really encourage people that are waiting for natural gas and and going through the process to first convert and make sure you're in compliance with DEP. And one way you can do that is basically by converting to 2 or to 4-oil first while you're waiting. Most people that we've worked with, when they convert to gas, they also convert to ultra-low sulfur 2 at the same time. So it's an easy step that buildings should take, and we encourage everyone to take, because gas conversions sometimes take a really long time to complete. So an easy way to get there is, while you're waiting for gas, convert to 2-oil, which you would probably have to do anyway. Submit your inspection request and the performance test and an affidavit saying that you're basically currently using fuel oil and you're waiting for gas. Then once gas becomes available and you get the connection from the utility, you can then convert to gas, and once you're connected to gas, then you submit another performance test and an affidavit saying that you're now on gas. What this does is it basically it helps you to not have to pay any additional fees. So once you've submitted an amendment for your dual fuel at the very beginning of the process, you won't have to pay any additional fees. So you shouldn't do these steps separately. You shouldn't convert, put an amendment for 2-oil and then put another amendment in for gas. Instead, you can follow these steps here. That way you can bypass the additional fees, and it'll help you get to compliance faster. So please, and let me know if anyone has questions about that. And again, I'm stressing the timelines here. We all know natural gas conversions take a really long time to complete. 9 to 18 months is probably a conservative estimate. Sometimes they take even longer. So unless you are in the absolute last stages of your gas conversion, chances are, and still on 6-oil, chances are you will not be able to make it in time. I've seen cases where buildings have completed their gas conversions and are just waiting for the gas to be turned on. Sometimes they're waiting a few months for that. So if you are somewhere in the middle of the process, I spoke to a building a couple of days ago that just completed their interim inspection with Con Ed. From that point on, you still have many, many months ahead of you, and there is no way that you can be able to comply with the DEP regulations in time. So you need to take that interim step. You need to convert we recommend going to 2-oil first, and then wait for that gas to be completed. For converting to 2-oil, it's really quickly. We have 4 to 6 weeks here from planning to construction. But really, if there are no major issues, this can be done a lot faster and can be completed within the time that we have left here. And I also wanted to address number 4 oil. Number 6 is really the priority right now, but number 4, there are still a lot of opportunities out there for folks that are burning number 4. If your property is still using number 4 today, you should really consider other alternatives and cleaner options. Not only are they more efficient, but they're also a lot cleaner. So even though 4-oil is still being permitted, and you're allowed to use 4 for the time being, unless you have to replace your burner or boiler, of course, you should really look to other alternatives. Cheaper, cleaner alternatives like ultra-low sulfur number 2 and natural gas. Gas prices right now, as you all know, are at their all-time lows. Ultra-low sulfur prices are also pretty cheap these days. They're coming down a lot. At times they're even cheaper than number 4. The prices for number 4 will continue to rise as less and less people in New York City use it. Of course, there are preheater issues that come up with 4-oil that you don't have to deal with and pay for when you're on 2-oil. And then lastly, there are inefficiencies. So not only is the soot that we, not only do we see the soot come out of the stack, but it's also clogging up your heating system. It's clogging up your boiler tubes. And just a little illustration here, you can see that just 1/8 of an inch, which in some cases can happen really quickly during the heating season with 4-oil, gives you about 8.5% efficiency loss. So, really important to consider cleaner options. Okay, so at this time, I will just address a couple of questions that have come in through the chat box. And if you guys want to queue up any other questions on the line, I will also open up the line in a couple of minutes, and we can have just a discussion, or you can ask your question then. So there is a question about the fines. What are the fines? So the fines from DEP for non-compliance, really there is a range. It could range from a few $100s to over $1,000, depending on your specific building and kind of where you are in the process. The fines, that's the first part. But the second strike of the enforcement is really what you need to be worried about, and that's the possible cease and desist. In which case, you could potentially get your building shut down and your boiler shut down. You don't want that to happen. We don't want anyone to go through that process, and we can work with you to help you comply. If you're having any issues, please, get in touch with us, and we'd be happy to help you with that. And I guess the follow-up to that is if you're subject to a fine for going to number 4 until you get natural gas. No, so if you're on 6 today, you're allowed to go to 4 while waiting for gas. We encourage people to go to 2 oil, just because most people, when they convert to gas, they go to 2 in gas. But if 4 oil works out better for you, there are some cases that it does, then that's fine. You're allowed to go on 4. Just know that when you're going to gas, usually you have to replace a burner. And when you do replace a burner and you want to keep dual fuel capability, you'll probably be required to go to 2 oil anyway. So if that's the case, you might want to just bypass 4 oil altogether, and that's why we always encourage that. Another question is, are there any consequences for oil companies that deliver 4 oil, that deliver 6 oil to a building? Not that we know of, although we are certainly in discussions with with suppliers and associations that that work with oil suppliers about how we can work together. But basically, the regulations as they stand right now, they're being enforced by DEP from the permitting side, not from the supply side. And then I also have a question about the list of the 600 buildings that still need to convert. Yes, and that list of buildings, actually, you can, if you go to our website, if you go or you can just Google Spot the Soot, you'll see our Spot the Soot map. So that will map out all the buildings, all the 600 buildings. But if you want an Excel spreadsheet download, you can actually, there's a link right above the map where you can download the full spreadsheet, and there you'll see all the buildings that are still on 6 oil.